Smith is in the know. Every weekday, be part of the stories. Be part of the conversation on the things that matter to you. Toll free, 1-800-563-7770. Call or text 403-974-8255. Danielle Smith on 770 CHQR.
Brought to you by the Popowich Carmeli Advisory Group, CIBC Wood Gundy.
It is 6 minutes after the hour. I'm Scott Thompson. It is the Scott Thompson Show from News Talk 900 CHML, Hamilton, Ontario, Global News Radio, and we are inviting you to join us for another East-West, an East-West simulcast, an East meets West simulcast, because honestly, I believe this is more about the West getting their word out than it is about the East. And we need you here in the Hammer to fill up the phone lines. Otherwise, we're going to be listening to Albertans all hour long because they are ticked. And if you've got questions for them, 905-645-3221, star 9900 on your cell here in Ontario. Please meet from the Danielle Smith Show, Global News Radio 770 CHQR Calgary, Global News Radio. Danielle Smith is with us. Danielle, thanks so much for the time. Have you got some rest? How do you feel after all of this campaign and everything has settled down?
I am tired. I'm a little bit punchy. I was pretty angry, but I have heard from our Premier, Jason Kenney, and it's made me feel much, much better. I've played a couple of the clips from his press conference yesterday where he's trying to channel a lot of this anger and a lot of this separation talk into something positive, into getting a new deal with Canada. And I think that if we can have some constructive conversation on that, I think that's going to be very positive. But make no mistake, Albertans are furious. Is that coming through?
Yes, we talked to the founder of Wexit out there yesterday, and that came through loud and clear. And it's fascinating because I think out here in the East, we need to hear more of that. It seems that we're hearing more about climate change and that message, not that isn't worth hearing, but it is overpowering what you are saying out in the West, and that's something we have to bring together. But that being said, we're getting a lot of questions on this. Headlines right across the country, including here, about Western separation. What is the talk there about Western separation? Is this a possibility?
Well, I can, you know what I'm interested in, and maybe you can provide some feedback on this. We're surprised, and I think I noticed this when we did our last conversation. It seems like the rest of the country either doesn't think about us at all, or when they do think about us, they're mad at us. Like that one caller you had who still has his T-shirt from 40 years ago about Eastern bastards and bums raising in the dark, and he's mad about it still, even though the vast majority of us, I was still a child when that was big. But there's still this, I think, this resentment from those who think about Alberta at all. But then there's also this difficulty of us getting our issues on the radar. We've been talking about the need for pipelines for years now. Does it make it through at all in most of the discussion in Ontario or even in your area?
The East does not hate the West. I want to translate that message right now. Honestly, we don't. We do not hate the West. But I do believe what has happened here in just the dialogue that I've heard throughout the election campaign is that the message in regard to climate change is overpowering the message that's coming from Alberta. And somehow we have to open those lines of communication and make it known that this is going to be a gradual transition, that we need the energy that is in the West to come out of the ground and be dispersed to various parts of the world that need it in order to provide a cleaner form of energy than what they are now using. That message is not being translated here in the East. Instead, I was on the air last night with our affiliate in Toronto with Alex Pearson, and there were some guests there that were saying, Alberta's got to understand it's got to transform into a different form of energy. And what Ontario does not realize is that does not happen overnight, and the people of Alberta are going through some extremely tough times right now as their message, again, is somehow getting lost in the sauce. And I wish I could explain it better than that.
Can I try to make a pitch? And just because I have this opportunity, let me see if I can try to marry what I'm hearing from those who care about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and those who care about developing our resources. I just had an interview with Purity Canada, who is working on building a natural gas liquefaction plant in Nova Scotia. We have an existing natural gas line that's underutilized. They've got a deal with Germany because Germany doesn't want to rely on Russia, because Russia could turn off the taps every time they want to wage economic warfare against Germany, and they want a reliable source of energy from us. And when we're talking about it, if we can start exporting natural gas and displacing fuels that are more polluting.
Absolutely.
In the case of Purity Energy or in the case of LNG Canada, each of those projects has the potential to reduce the reliance on coal and as a result reduce 60 to 90 megatons of greenhouse gas emissions in each one of those projects. Now keep in mind, Canada only produces about 712 megatons. If we produce if we manage to get these kinds of plants on both the east and the west coast, we can be net zero in our own emissions just by that alone within a matter of a few years.
Danielle, you're making way too much sense here. You know, we are fighting this battle in a silo. And that's what's happening here, is that Canada is fighting this battle in a silo and doesn't realize it's a worldwide effort. And that, you know, even in our provinces, the difference of opinion with Ontario compared to the West and so on and so forth. We need to open up this discussion and come out with a plan. It's not so much about how we reduce Canada's emissions. Our emissions are minimal on the world stage. It's what can we do to bring down the world emissions? And that's the conversation not only should we be having around the world, but also here. And that doesn't even seem to be happening from province to province.
And that's a shame, because in some ways, if you look at each of the party platforms, I mean, when Justin Trudeau switched to a net zero target for greenhouse gas emissions, that's kind of embracing exactly what I'm talking about by saying, hey, if we can reduce elsewhere, we get credit for it.
Well, what happens is the climate change advocates are, they're very extreme, and the whole solution for them is shut her down. Just shut it down, stop it all. If we're moving towards a green environment, we can't be sucking it out of the ground now. And again, we've got to bridge that gap. And again, getting back to the whole separation issue before we bail on this break, before the break, what is the Premier saying? What is the Premier's next plan of attack?
The number one thing that he said is that he's not going to allow Justin Trudeau's bad policy to push him out of Canada, because he is a strong Canadian first. Number two, he does not diminish at all the separatist talk that he's hearing about. Because keep in mind, in Alberta, I mean, in some ways it's easy to just look at the dollars and cents of this, but the human side of this is people have lost their homes. People have lost their jobs. Some people have not been working for 4 years. Others have had to take jobs working at a fraction of what they were when they were there and in the energy business. Marriages have broken up because financial stress is one of the biggest strains on a relationship. And we've had suicides as well. So there is a very human cost to not allowing people to have well-paying jobs and not allowing Alberta to control its own destiny. So
something Ontario should be able to identify with the loss of manufacturing jobs we've had
completely.
Over the years.
You've had the exact same experience. So, but he wants to channel it into, number one, New Deal on equalization, one that's fair to Alberta and Saskatchewan. Number two, looking at a new relationship with Canada. Might involve us collecting our own pension plan, might involve us doing as Quebec does, running our own immigration system, having our own police force, getting tax points instead of federal transfers. And it also involves us finding economic corridors that are pre-negotiated to allow us to get our resources to market. And that includes not just pipelines, but also includes potentially transmission lines. It also includes new rail lines so that we can get our agricultural products to market. If we can do that, I think that the country's going to be in good shape.
15 minutes after the hour, it's the East Meets West radio simulcast. Global News Radio, 900 CHML here in Hamilton and 770 CHQR Calgary. Global News Radio out there. It's the Danielle Smith Show and the Scott Thompson Show. We're coming right back.
Let's start with Jihadi Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global. Good journalism isn't just about covering the story. It's about exposing the truth. That's why we dug into the dirty money fueling Canada's deadly drug epidemic. Why we uncovered the government's secret plan to harvest your personal financial data, and how we found crooked pharmacists in Ontario.
And but for a Global News report, Canadians would never know.
Investigative reporting that leads to real change. Global News.
I was born to be great, not about the fast cars, big dreams and names, and the bright lights. for. Gotta be who you are, got the dreams that big, you're gonna be a star. Everyone wants to be like me. Meanwhile, got the song repeating like a go, go. Oh, it ain't about the things that you got to say. You know you gotta fight every single day, and every one of us, yeah, we were born great tonight.
The world moves way too fast, and we're all so busy, it's easy to get lost in the chaos of the news cycle. So let's slow it down. I'm Tamara Kandaker, host of the new daily podcast, Wait, There's More. It's a deeper look at the news of the day, from politics to pop culture. We're exploring new angles, asking tough questions, and talking to the people directly affected by those stories. Get the Global News Daily Podcast, Wait, There's More, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Global National with Donna Friesen, winner of the 2019 Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor.
All right, welcome back. It's Danielle Smith here at 770 CHQR in Calgary. We are with Scott Thompson, host of the Scott Thompson Show on 900 CHML in Hamilton. Scott, I wonder if you could tell us from your perspective, what happened in Hamilton and area? How did it end up voting? It's no secret how we ended up voting in Alberta, although there is one NDP seat in Edmonton, but they are a pro-pipeline MP, even though they wear the NDP banner. How did things go in Hamilton?
Not much change here in Hamilton per se itself. Some change with far as Hamilton Centre and the NDP candidate there due to another retiring. But as far as Ontario itself, I think what a lot of people expected to happen was as the whole blackface and the SNC-Lavalin scandal and what have you started circulating around the Trudeau camp, that we would see the left vote split. And especially with all the popularity with Jagmeet Singh post-election debate here, there was an awful lot of buzz about him and inroads he was making. That's, I think, what most thought would happen, or some thought would happen, in regard to Ontario. That simply didn't happen. The Liberals lost about 10 seats, but that was pretty much it. And the Ontario brought the Liberals back. I mean, that's as simple as it is. Scheer did not resonate here, whether that's the Doug Ford factor or not. Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, silent through the whole campaign. And it was fascinating yesterday. All of a sudden he spoke. It was like hearing birds chirping in spring. I'd barely recognized his voice. We finally heard from him yesterday, and many are debating now whether that was a good move by Andrew Scheer. Should he have somehow maybe used him in limited forms and made him part of the strategy, as opposed to just playing into the narrative and, covering him up in a burlap sack and putting him away somewhere until the election was over.
Well,
so
we had
in the end, Ontario Ontario rewarded the Liberals.
Well, okay, so we had somebody on our show yesterday when I was simulcasting with Ryan who said that Doug Ford's popularity is at 28%. So as much as people are saying he could have helped, what do you think? Do you think he could have helped?
No, I mean, I think hindsight's 20/20, and many I asked yesterday said that very same thing, that had he had come out and it would have only made things worse. I don't know. It's hard to say, but it certainly did play into the Prime Minister's narrative. I mean, every stop he made here in Ontario, he just hammered away at Doug Ford, and if you elect Andrew Scheer, you're going to get more of the same sort of thing that Ontarians are experiencing now, and I honestly think that spooked a lot of Ontario voters. And then we watched the wave across the country. But yeah, and then going back to Quebec, the Bloc went in, nibbled quite a bit away from the Liberals, but also the NDP. So any gains that people were talking about the NDP making were pretty much a wash with what the Bloc did in Quebec. So Ontario proved to be the ground where the Liberals won it.
We're having this debate about whether or not Andrew Scheer should stay on. I'm of the view he's had 2 years at it. He had tremendous growth over the last 2 years. I thought he did a great job having people get to know him in both of those debates. He just needs a little bit more. He needs to sound a little bit more natural, a little bit more sincere. I think that it's minor tweaks as opposed to a major overhaul. How do you see it? Do you think people are saying he should go? That he's not the right fit to win seats in Ontario?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think it was fascinating. Ronna Ambrose on election night when she was doing some TV coverage had a shirt that said "A woman's place is," and then underneath that, the council chambers. And black shirt, white letters, same font that's in the Make America Great Again hat. And to me, I think that was her first day of the campaign for the leadership. I think that with Andrew Scheer, he just stumbled on a couple of things that he should have had better answers for, like when it comes to a pride parade, why can't you march? And if it's something that you believe in and it's your religious beliefs, then own that, stand by that. And he did towards the end, but he didn't come out enough ahead of that. And I think I think as well in the debate where he came out and just hammered Trudeau right off the top. I mean, if that's your politics, you're loving it. But on the other hand, I think he could have said the exact same thing, but a lot more prime ministerial. And I just don't think he resonated the way he could have. Interesting. I've got an email from a listener here, and they are asking you what your thoughts are in regard to Andrew Scheer. If you think that the Conservatives picked the wrong horse, and also if you think the Conservatives have gone too far to the right.
Well, I would say that his A-team bailed on him. I think there's no question. Everyone thought that Justin Trudeau is more than just a politician. He's a celebrity, number one, and he's also in some ways royalty. He's sort of treated, maybe it's because we have a monarchic system, he's sort of treated like he's untouchable and part of our Canadian royalty, and he certainly acts like it. And so I think when he got elected, a lot of Conservatives who had leadership aspirations thought this guy's going to be here for as long as he wants to be.
Absolutely.
Maybe
the Peter MacKays, the Lisa Raids, Ronna Ambrose, they all bailed.
Yeah,
and unfortunately, in all of this, Lisa Raitt lost her seat here in Milton in Ontario, so she's not even a candidate next time out.
I know, exactly. And so he was the guy who stepped up when no one else was willing to step up. No one expected Justin Trudeau might be as weak as he was going into a second term. No one even knew who Andrew Scheer was really until the campaign started. So from that perspective, I give the guy a lot of credit. Somebody made a really good point today that we have to see how he conducts himself in this opposition role now that we're in a minority parliament, because there's two things. One is they don't have a majority on the committees anymore. They can't just use the hammer to shut down the Justice Committee if they want to do an SNC level in public inquiry. And one of the things Andrew Scheer has going for him is that he used to be Speaker of the House. And as Speaker, you have to have a positive working relationship with every single member, because it's your job to respect their rights as individual elected members before party considerations. And I don't think we've actually seen him be able to use that kind of diplomacy skills in the previous round in the Parliament. I think we might actually see where his real skills lie this time. I think we should give him a chance. And who knows, they might decide to take Justin Trudeau out from within. If I was a Liberal MP sitting there right now, and I saw Jody Wilson-Raybould, one of the most principled women in politics, is sitting as an independent only because their leader was at odds with her and kicked her out, I'd be thinking, who who do I want to take with me going forward on a long-term basis? Jody Wilson-Raybould or this guy? And so he might not even last to the next election. And if that's the case, maybe it balances the playing field for Andrew Scheer.
I think there is a lot of indecision as to who's going to lead. I was just talking to Tim Powers, Vice Chairman of Summa Strategies, prior to you, and was saying that, even he was even hearing rumblings around Ottawa today that maybe the Prime Minister will not even complete his second term, and there'll be a leadership contest before that even happens. I think with Andrew Scheer, you brought up a very valid point. We didn't know him, and then all of a sudden, boom, he's thrust into that, the ring of politicians and celebrity, so to speak, and having to debate and look well, and so on and so forth. As you point out, as being Speaker of the House, there is a certain amount of diplomacy there, and we may see that finally come out and see Andrew Scheer mature as a leader as his new role as opposition. It'll be interesting to see, or in his role in this minority government, it'll be interesting to see how he holds Trudeau to account. I think some people thought he was speaking, especially with that first joust at the debate, it was something that they didn't think to hear out of the mouth of Andrew Scheer.
I think you're right.
Somebody wrote him that line, and here it is. So I think when we find what the real Andrew Scheer is all about, perhaps that will resonate.
Well, we'll see. I've got someone telling me you are dreaming, Danielle, and so I think our listeners want to weigh in because they may have a very different view than I do. But we've got to take a pause right now. Scott Thompson is host of Scott Thompson Show on 900 CHML in Hamilton. I'm Danielle Smith, host of 770 CHQR, The Danielle Smith Show in Calgary. We'll be right back after this on Chorus Radio.
I was born to be great, not about the fast cars, big dreams and names, and the bright lights, the best nights are waiting for you. Gotta be who you are, got the dreams that big, you're gonna be a star. Everyone wants to be like a meanwhile, got the song repeating like a go! It ain't about the things that you got to say, you know you gotta find every single day, and every one of us, yeah, we were born great tonight.
Make some
Let's start with Jihadi Jack because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global. Good journalism isn't just about covering the story. It's about exposing the truth. That's why we dug into the dirty money fueling Canada's deadly drug epidemic. Why we uncovered the government's secret plan to harvest your personal financial data. And how we found crooked pharmacists in Ontario.
And but for a global news report, Canadians would never know.
Investigative reporting that leads to real change. Global News.
The world moves way too fast, and we're all so busy, it's easy to get lost in the chaos of the news cycle. So let's slow it down. I'm Tamara Kandaker, host of the new daily podcast, Wait, There's More. It's a deeper look at the news of the day, from politics to pop culture. We're exploring new angles, asking tough questions, and talking to the people directly affected by those stories. Get the Global News daily podcast, Wait, There's More, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Global National with Donna Friesen, winner of the 2019 Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor.
I was born to be great, not about the fast cars, big dreams and names, and the bright lights, the best nights are waiting for you. Gotta be who you are, got the dreams that big, you're gonna be a star. Everyone wants to be like a meanwhile, got the song repeating like a go! It ain't about the things that you got to say, you know you gotta find every single day, and every one of us, yeah, we were born
Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global.
Let's start with Jihadi Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global. Global National with Donna Friesen, winner of the 2019 Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor.
The world moves way too fast, and we're all so busy, it's easy to get lost in the chaos of the news cycle. So let's slow it down. I'm Tamara Kendacker, host of the new daily podcast, Wait, There's More. It's a deeper look at the news of the day, from politics to pop culture. We're exploring new angles, asking tough questions, and talking to the people directly affected by those stories. Get the Global News daily podcast, Wait, There's More, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
And listen, but if you want to dive in and be part of the conversation, be our guest. Danielle Smith on 770 CHQR.
Brought to you by the Popowich Carmeli Advisory Group, CIBC Wood Gundy.
It is the Scott Thompson Show, Global News Radio, 900 CHML, Hamilton, Ontario. You are a part of an East Meets West radio simulcast, another with the Danielle Smith Show, Global News Radio, 770 CHQR in Calgary, Alberta. Before we continue, this is an interview, a piece of an interview from yesterday with Peter Downing. He is the founder of Wexit.
There's never going to be another conservative government in Canada. Western Canada is going to separate, and Alberta is going to be the first one that separates. Justin Trudeau is going to have the legacy. He talks about guns. He's done nothing to get... I was a policeman for 9 years. He's done nothing to get real firearms out of the hands of real criminals. He's targeting lawful firearms owners. Our biggest supporters are firearms owners in Western Canada. Justin Trudeau is going to have the legacy of being the Prime Minister who lost Western Canada, and Alberta's the first one to go from Confederation.
All right, a simulcast with CHML in Hamilton and CHQR in Calgary. Danielle, your thoughts? I mean, I was listening to a professor chat last night saying that it's economically just not feasible for Alberta to separate, that it'd be worse for them in the end.
Well, I think that the Prime Minister may have finally gotten the message that we're serious out here. Can I just play this clip that he said just a couple of seconds ago? Because this might be the best answer to that question. Listen to this.
We made the decision to move forward on the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion because it was in Canada's interest to do so, because the environment and the economy need to go together. We will be continuing with the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion.
That is... I think that is the response to Wexit, is that he obviously sees that when 200,000 people sign up overnight onto a Vote Wexit page, when you get almost 100,000 people signing a petition for Alberta to leave overnight in 24 hours, when you get the Premier of the province of Alberta saying you got to do something to affirm that you're going to continue with that expansion, he heard that message. And so I would say
Are you buying that though, Danielle?
Yes.
Are Albertans going to buy that?
Yes, because I think what everybody worried about was that Jagmeet Singh being that his riding is Burnaby, which is where the end of the pipeline goes through and where the holding tanks are, I think everybody thought that might be a condition for him to support the government. And the fact that he cleared that up within the first 2 days of being elected, that the expansion is going ahead, I think that's very positive. It doesn't solve all of our problems, because I think in Alberta, we're thinking that the Liberal government believes this should be the last pipeline build. Yeah. We still have other pipeline projects that need to go ahead, and we need economic corridors, whether it's to Churchill so that we can export out of the Hudson Bay, or whether it's up to Tuktoyaktuk so that we can export out of the north. If we can't go east and west, that we need to have some kind of agreement that we're going to be able to get our products to market. So, do you want to go to the lines and hear what people are saying? I'm probably Pollyanna-ish. I try to look at the glass half full, but my audience might be a little more angry today. So let's see what they have to say. Right. I've got.
And by the way, I'm just the messenger here.
I know, we're not shooting the messenger. Don't you worry. Let's see what we got here. We got Joe, we got Murray, we got Blaine, we got William, and we got Brian. You've probably got some lineups, so we'll go back and forth between them. Let's go to Joe first. Joe, go ahead. What's on your mind today?
Oh, thanks for having me. One of the few times I actually want to disagree with you. I don't think Alberta separation is about economics and pipelines anymore. It's cultural. I think we are distinct, and I think it's time for the intelligentsia and the poets and artists and things to get on board and really build a new nation.
Joe, thank you for that. So there is this sense that if you look at how blue we went, some of our ridings went 85% conservative. We're as much a distinct society as Quebec are. It might not be a linguistic difference, but there's a cultural difference. I think you'll find a lot of people feel that way, Scott.
All right, let's see what Dave has to say. Dave in the Hammer, go ahead. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm glad Trudeau mentioned the pipeline. I think that's definitely key to keeping the West somewhat, how do I put it, happy or making it relieved. I mean, it's taken its toll on the West, this not having a pipeline and the oil industry sagging. It's cost a lot of jobs and a lot of pain, and a lot of people out here, especially in Hamilton, the manufacturing base that disappeared, can feel for the people out West. And I don't understand why you haven't countered this environmental message that they want this stuff stopped right away. Even the experts say this stuff that they want is a minimum of 50 years away. So I'm hoping that you get the message out and realize people that this is going to take decades to happen. And in the meantime, we need to support a country of 37 million people, have a half-decent standard of living. And the way to do that is by exporting things, especially resources.
That's a good point, Dave. Wow. Again, and Dave is echoing this, that the message is not getting out, that the climate change activists, and again, not to sit here and debate that, they are getting all of the attention, and they say, shut it down. Can I
add one more thing to the mix there? Even if you think that you're going to have a hybrid car in the future or an electric car in the future, asphalt comes from bitumen. Yeah. So roads are still going to be needed to be made, even if you have everybody on an electric fleet. And the best source of that is going to be right here from Alberta. And that's why it's such a valuable product, if only we could get it to market. I've got Murray on the line. Murray, go ahead. What's your thought today?
Well, hi. I just don't understand why railroad can run through Canada, but people are against the pipeline going through Canada. It's unbelievable. Yeah. And I'll tell you, something that came to mind today was a truck driver being beaten to death in Los Angeles years ago. And what he said afterwards, can't we all just get along?
Murray, thank you for that. You know what I'm hearing, though? Whenever I talk to you, I'm always surprised at how many in your audience are very sympathetic to what we're experiencing here. Let's see if we can get a little bit more of that, Scott.
This is about to take another turn.
Oh, darn it. Okay.
An email from Larry says, why did they expand so much knowing, hang on, that's the wrong one here. They don't understand Hamilton either. Migrate this way once in a while. And I guess I'll go to what the other caller just said, in the sense that has the West made enough of an effort to prove their point? Have they made enough of an effort to counter what we are hearing from the other extreme on this?
Well, it's a good question. I think the energy industry did not. I think the energy industry just assumed that because people go to their vehicles and fill up their cars every few days, that they knew how much they relied on the energy sector.
Out here, Danielle, it's the science, and you can't argue with the science. The science is the science is the science. That's what you'll hear as soon as you start to have a debate similar to the one we're having.
You know what?
One extreme to the other.
You know what? Amen, Scott. Let's get back to the science. The science does not say humanity is going extinct in 10 years if we stop using fossil fuels. That is what extremists are saying. They are misrepresenting the science. The IPCC report does not say that. And so here's what has happened is that we have allowed the science to be hijacked by people who have an agenda to shut down a particular industry. What the science says is, yeah, there's going to be a potential increase in extreme weather events. Yeah, we're going to have certain areas of the world that are going to have impacts. And now we've got to talk about what to do about it. I think anyone who thinks that we stop hurricanes or we stop flooding or we stop forest fires because Canada kills its fossil fuel industry is not telling the truth. And so we are still going to have to deal with the impacts of severe weather events. And we also at the same time have to make sure that we're dealing with the biggest emitters, a growing China, a growing India, United States. We have got to use the solutions that we have at our disposal right now. But yes, I agree with you, Scott. Let's get back to the science and let's stop pretending that the Elizabeth Mays of the world saying that and the Extinction Rebellion people are reflecting the scientific consensus. They are absolutely not.
I do believe that each one of these groups is operating in a silo and refuses to talk to the other or simply can't get the message out. Again, I think what's important in this discussion is it appears that Canada is trying to fix the world all by themselves. Canada cannot save the planet. They're a part of the solution. And I think what needs to happen is Canadians have to stop looking at themselves with this really clean, shiny image that we're the best at everything we do. And we have to be the trendsetter when it comes to renewable energy and renewable technology. And of course we should. But we should be eyeing this from a global perspective, not just Canada. We hear constantly, per capita Canadians produce more carbon emissions than blah, 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 blah. Well, we've got a giant country and not many people. There's things we have to take into consideration, and we have to fight this battle globally, not just within the shores of Canada.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm such a big fan of natural gas, because you can't expand intermittent energy sources like solar and wind without having natural gas as a backup. As much as they like to say batteries are the solution, guess what happens with batteries? You have to mine lithium. You've got to mine cobalt. There's all kinds of environmental issues that you're doing as a trade-off. The very best backup is a fossil fuel. And I think that natural gas provides a good transition energy to get to lower total global emissions until something else. Maybe Bill Gates will save us with his new nuclear technology if anybody is open-minded enough to try that.
Another issue coming out of email and such is gun control. Here's one from our side from Rich. A big issue for people in Toronto is high gun crime. Most are illegal. Regardless, they want tougher gun control. How does this and the West feel about this? We'll take this perhaps to the next segment. We're going to take a quick break here. This is the East Meets West radio simulcast. Scott Thompson Show here in Hamilton and the Danielle Smith Show in Calgary, Alberta. We're coming right back.
Global National with Donna Friesen, winner of the 2019 Canadian Screen Award for Best National News Anchor.
The world moves way too fast, and we're all so busy, it's easy to get lost in the chaos of the news cycle. So let's slow it down. I'm Tamara Kendacker, host of the new daily podcast, Wait, There's More. It's a deeper look at the news of the day, from politics to pop culture. We're exploring new angles, asking tough questions, and talking to the people directly affected by those stories. Get the Global News Daily Podcast, Wait, There's More, wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
Let's start with Jihadi Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global. Good journalism isn't just about covering the story. It's about exposing the truth. That's why we dug into the dirty money fueling Canada's deadly drug epidemic. Why we uncovered the government's secret plan to harvest your personal financial data, and how we found crooked pharmacists in Ontario.
And but for a Global News report, Canadians would never know.
Investigative reporting that leads to real change. Global News.
Let's start with Jihadi Jack, because a lot of Canadians reacted to this. Joining me now is Morgan Ortega, spokesperson for the U.S. Department of State. This is a pretty established crossing at this point.
The West Block with Mercedes Stevenson, Sundays on Global.
Yep. All right, welcome back. It's Danielle Smith, host of the Danielle Smith Show in Calgary, 770 CHQR. We're with Scott Thompson on the Scott Thompson Show at 900 CHML in Hamilton. I've got a bunch of people saying, stop jibber-jabbering and let people talk. So let me read a few texts out. Why did you suddenly become so naive to actually believe Trudeau, Danielle? Come on. Another person, Danielle, are you happy now that Sunny Ways will go ahead with the pipeline? So what's next? Another person saying, I'm not going to believe anything until I start seeing shovels in the ground. And so there's a lot of people who, as I say, not everybody agrees with me. I tend to look at things from a positive perspective. People are mad. Another person here says, no offense, Hamilton, but not interested in 30 more years for the East to care, start the divorce. That's some of our texters. I've got a few calls that are on the line here as well. So let's go to Blaine, see what's on his mind today. Blaine, go ahead. Your thought today.
Yeah, good morning.
Hey.
There's a really good documentary that'll kind of sum up everything you guys are talking about, called Over a Barrel.
To just explain to people what it is so that they know why they should watch it.
Oh, it kind of links everything together as to why the protesters come out of the woodworks to protest. How, it basically explains really well how companies from out of our country are attacking our oil and gas industry and every kind of industry we have in our country in Canada.
All right, Blaine, thank you for that. It also, I've watched it. It's Vivian Krause. I don't know if you ever interviewed Vivian Krause, Scott.
No, I don't think I have. No.
So Vivian Krause is she has a website called Fair Questions, and she was interviewed. I think she got national profile when she was interviewed by Wendy Mesley from CBC, talking about all of the American Foundation funding coming into Canada, and it's several $100 million to landlock Alberta oil. So she's just done a documentary. It's called Over a Barrel, and she interviews First Nations communities, so First Nations can talk about how they have been manipulated into supporting the same cause.
Boy, we've heard lots of that. Lots of the American influences coming in over the border, and some of these agencies that sort of take the science and alter it to fit their narrative. I think what's important here is that the East and the West understand where each is coming from, and as we're having this broadcast, you can really understand that there's just a massive gap here. There's a massive gap between what you want and what you think, and what people here want and think. And here's hoping that with discussion like this, and as your callers were saying, your texters were saying, your emailers were saying, when I heard that clip from Trudeau, I'm thinking there's no way the West is going to buy this.
Yeah, and that's pretty well.
Where's the action? Where's the action?
Exactly.
Until you start seeing dirt flying, I mean, come on.
It's true. And you know what? You asked the question before the break about the gun issue. It certainly is an issue, but I would have to say the pipeline issue has been the one that has dominated our calls. I'm sure if there may be some of our listeners here who want to weigh in and take that question from one
I got a call here. Let's, Dennis, on that issue, and I think some pipeline as well. Dennis, go ahead. What's your thoughts for the West?
Oh, my thoughts are actually more Western than Eastern. I'm from Ontario, lived here 3 generations, both cattle and horse farms. And I look at the situation from the point of view is that it's nice to say, as we just threw out our provincial leader for somebody else who was trying to force now this whole idea of get off gas and get on to this other renewable energies. And what did it cost us? It cost us huge because we're just not ready to do it. The infrastructure to do that, to get the electricity and everything else into place just isn't there. We need oil. That pipeline should have been built a long time ago. There's no reason for it. It's really pathetic that BC stands there and says, hey, you can't come through us, but yet we're going to pull coal out of the ground and ship it to China and pollute it even more when this is a cleaner source right here, and we should be selling it to China. It's just bureaucracy gone stupid. And as far as gun control, name me one murder in Toronto that's happened with a shotgun, which happened with a rifle. Very few of them in the basis for what we look at. We're looking at handguns. There's a total disconnect for what people actually need and what our politicians are giving for our people.
Oh, right on. And it's a gang problem, and it's a crime problem. That's the way it's got to be addressed. I totally agree with your caller.
What is your relationship with BC now?
Our relationship with BC is great with those who are in interior BC, great with the First Nations along a route that wants to get a pipeline or two built. But I would say that with the Lower Mainland, we still have some work to do.
That's sad. It really is. I mean, you think of the divisiveness out east in Quebec, and then the divisiveness between BC and Alberta, and then east and west. I mean, how did we get here? It's unbelievable.
Well, and we did used to be such great friends with British Columbia as well. It's created some tension, but I think part of the issue is that you'll see Alberta work more closely with those friends and neighbors that are aligned with us politically. And even in BC, they're aligned on the issue of developing natural gas. So that may be a place to begin. I got a few more calls here. Shall I go for them? Let's go to William. William, go ahead. Your thought today.
Hey, if we put our Western point of view away from this election, you got 157 seats being corrupt, ethic problems, running a deficit. Nobody even cares how bad this deficit's going to be. And you can't get the farmer's product to market. And you still got 157 seats, even if we forget the Western view.
William, thank you for that. That's what a lot of people are frustrated by. Like, why couldn't people see through that? He's a terrible leader on just objective counts. Why would he have gotten such a large mandate?
I don't know.
Okay,
again,
that's fair enough.
I think it's the lack of opposition. I think that a lot of people didn't know Andrew Scheer. I think Frank, one of our emailers just emailed in that said his last speech after the election results were announced were perhaps his most passionate speech. Where was that earlier on in the campaign? Again, Frank goes back to leadership. He just didn't think the leadership was there this time to overtake Trudeau. It's as simple as that.
I got Brian on the line as well. Brian, go ahead. Your thought today.
Good morning, Danielle.
Yeah, go ahead.
I called about an hour and a half ago because of a gentleman that was saying that when they play the Canadian anthem, when the Maple Leafs come to play the Calgary Flames, we should all sit down.
Yeah.
I disagree with him. I think that's disrespectful, but he does have a glimmer of an idea. And I also have something else to say, too.
Well, tell us what the glimmer of an idea is. What do you want to see instead?
instead of singing the national anthem, how about singing "This land is my land, this land is your land"? Secondly, you just hit on it there a bit too about how Ontario decides who's going to be PM before we even get the vote in the West. How about an equal elected Senate? That way, every province has the same say.
Brian, thank you for that. I don't know, is Senate reform an issue in Ontario? It's certainly something we talk a lot about out here.
One thing I can tell you on the Leafs front, the same thing happens when the Leafs play in Ottawa, so that's not really much of a protest.
You know, I had somebody else say that we should all be wearing our I Love Canadian Oil and Gas T-shirts at the game. Those are great. Yeah, totally.
You've got to send me one of those out. I'll spread the word
Scott,
this way.
I absolutely will. We're coming down into the ending moments here. Do you have one more word for us from Hamilton?
The only thing I can say is it is time that both sides of this discussion are heard. It's time that we put the rhetoric aside, examine the science, and look at every view within this province, every country, every province within the country. And I think it is so important to do that. We are just not communicating with each other.
Well, I'm so glad you and I are communicating. Let's make sure we do this again sometime, all right?
Absolutely.
You got it. That's Scott Thompson, host of the Scott Thompson Show on 900 CMHL in Hamilton. I'm Danielle Smith at 770 CHQR in Calgary. We will be right back after news on Chorus Radio.